The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology Podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost Here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. I have two guests today, Josh Mciver, the CEO, and a fellow named Taulant, and I'm going to have him say his last name, the CTO of a company called Uledger. How are you guys doing?
Good, really good.
Doing great.
Could you say your full name for the guests and just talk about your position briefly, and then we'll move on?
Sure. So my name's Taulant Ramabaja. It's an Albanian name, so it's like way up there, and I'm the CTO.
All right, very good. All right, so first question, it's always the basics. Tell me about Uledger. What do you guys do there?
So I'll start, Taulant, I guess, and then pass it over to you. So Uledger, at its very core, is a blockchain overlay for a company's existing technology infrastructure. So we can augment what they already have and enable it to literally be a blockchain. So we're a blockchain protocol that helps companies assert and prove the integrity of their data. So as a result, it allows them to prove in certain scenarios that their data is what they said it was at a certain point in time, whether it's an audit or a legal scenario or a customer dispute, whatever it is, they can use the immutability of blockchain technology to prove that their data is or isn't what they said it was at a certain point of time. Taulant, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so Josh, I think, explained it quite well there. So additionally, I would also add that unlike pretty much any other blockchain technology out there, we are a so-called stateless blockchain design. So therefore, we are an actual protocol in the actual computer science sense of the word. So we're closer to TCP/IP in that sense than, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum. And therefore, we do not have most of the scaling issues pretty much any normal blockchain out there has. And beyond the simple verification and timestamping of data, we, as a result of our stateless approach, make it also possible to have independently verifiable order of events between companies and between blockchains. So that really makes a whole range of use cases possible which aren't possible either with normal infrastructure or with current designs of blockchains.
All right, so I'm not sure what you guys do. So is your software, is it a blockchain as itself, or how does it work? Do you have any specific use cases that you can tell me about on how a company would use this to blockchainify what they do right now?
So we are an actual blockchain software company, albeit, like Taulant said, a very unique and different one, the way we approach blockchain. So Taulant, maybe you explain our technology, and then I'll go into the use cases a bit.
Sure. So essentially, this is a protocol. It simply defines how your system stores and compares data with one another. Now, I'm not going to get into the details there, but as a result of what we call cross-merkelization, which is a patent-pending process of ours, we essentially make it possible for you to anchor the validity of your data with other systems, with other companies, with other servers. So if you are aware of things like colored coin, or if you are aware of things like Taulant or Factum or Chainpoint, guard time, etc. These are all essentially ways how people anchor their data to a single blockchain.
Yeah, I know, for instance, like Factum will take large amounts of data, use Merkle trees to hash it all together and then anchor the root hash into a blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain right now. So
Exactly.
Yours sounds like it works a little bit different. What can you say the differences are? Are you doing the same thing just with a different technology, or does yours have kind of a different intention?
The difference is pretty fundamental, and the intention, I guess, is also different. Let's compare it to Factum, right, which is pretty representative of all the other examples I gave. You essentially do hashing, merkelization of data, of events, and then you push a single Merkle root into first the Factum chain, and then at certain checkpoints or blocks, the Factum chain essentially includes its latest root or block in the Bitcoin blockchain or Ethereum blockchain or really any other blockchain. So it's essentially you anchor your data to the Factum chain, and then Factum in turn anchors itself to another chain. But the real deal here is the anchoring process and how you define how and when and what actually gets anchored. We have come up with a protocol that makes it possible for you to literally have your own blockchain data structure within your own company in a centralized or decentralized way. It really doesn't make much of a difference to us. And you are then able to push arbitrary numbers of block headers or Merkle roots to an arbitrary number of other blockchains to anchor your chain to other chains. So it becomes really kind of like a peer-to-peer, infrastructure where companies essentially anchor the legitimacy of their data to other companies' data structures. And therefore, the integrity of your data isn't just backed up by a single chain, but it's actually backed up by any number of chains which you choose to anchor your data to.
Companies may not know, first of all, how to anchor, which I guess your technology would solve, but which chains to anchor to? I mean, which ones are going to be the popular ones? And do you recommend a company anchors to one chain or two chains or 10 chains? And, what are the trade-offs? I mean, how do you advise a company on how to do this for them?
So our protocol the client of our protocol essentially tries to anchor your data with as many of the immediate neighbors in the network as possible, and by default tries to anchor with chains with which your chain interacts with, so has some sort of input-output relationship to. So for example, if you're an airline and you rely on the credit card company verifying that the payment was done, and let's say both the credit card company and the airline have Uledger installed, you can include in the airline ticket a link to the verification on the chain of the credit card company that the payment was done. So you can make that arbitrarily complex by linking any number of different outputs of different chains with one another and verifying the integrity of each one of these pieces of a transaction across various chains. So one analogy that some people have come up with to kind of explain this in comparing it more to a traditional chain, think of it as if each company would be its own oracle of its own data, kind of how oracles nowadays push data to, let's say, the Ethereum chain. But it actually becomes possible to verify the order of what data was pushed when to any number of chains. And think of it as if these oracles all send data to one another and through this process secure one another. And the really interesting part here becomes really that companies do not need to actually share all their data with a number of nodes to secure it. They only do need to perform this cross-merkelization process and keep the actual readable data with them or share it selectively with whoever has to see it.
You're allowing companies to have this incorruptible database, i.e. a blockchain, for whatever data they want to put on it, and then you're also helping them to anchor their data into the public blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. So that at any point in the future they can verify without disclosing their data, but they can still verify, yes, X and Y and Z were data that we owned at this time, and here it was timestamped and put into a public blockchain. Is that right?
So we do not actually anchor the data to public blockchain because there's really no need for it. And this is really where the cool part about Uledger comes up. The companies only need to anchor their data to neighboring chains, neighboring Uledger chains. And when I say like neighboring Uledger chains, it literally means that each company has their own blockchain data structure, a Merkle DAG, a Merkelized direct acyclic graph, which you can think of it kind of like a log on steroids. And by them essentially interweaving with one another in this fashion, it becomes pretty much probabilistically impossible to unweave that and create a fake alternative history that way. So at no point do you actually need a public chain in the sense of Bitcoin or Ethereum to secure your internal company chain.
Okay, got it. What are some of the use cases that companies are interested in using this for? Like triple entry accounting? What kind of thing that is most exciting to a company to be able to use this for?
As you might be able to imagine, the use cases are pretty broad. It's really anytime a company has data that needs to be proven in some manner, or other people make decisions based on that data, they can use Uledger to authenticate or certify the integrity of that data. Or there's a need to create some kind of repository of authenticated data. Or there's a need to interact with some kind of smart contracts or have some kind of document management system showing the evolution of a document. So the use cases vary. Some of the more exciting projects that we're working on right now include the City of Boise is a current customer of ours. And in fact, just last week, 2 weeks ago now, we got to see our software not only implemented on site, but actually working within their environment. So that was really exciting for us. And they're using Uledger for a couple purposes. The rollout there is we're going to start with one area and roll it out eventually to their entire infrastructure. But the starting point has been their utilities department, where when you buy or sell a home, there's prorated utilities that the buyer and seller agree to pay along with the title company. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, there's disputes all the time about who owes what and when they owe it. And so the city is using blockchain where the buyer, seller, and title company can all agree on exactly what is owed and who owes it and why they owe that. So it's not high dollar amounts, but that's just the starting point for the city.
A lot of people just talk in generalities, so I think listeners really want to hear specifics. So that's a good specific. So for instance, to drill down even a tiny bit further, I'm buying a house and we're closing on the 5th of the month. I'm supposed to not be responsible for the electricity, or I'm supposed to be responsible as of the 5th, and the seller is supposed to not be responsible as of the 5th. And you're saying sometimes there'll be an argument later saying, oh, the electricity was never transferred and the seller was charged until the 10th, and they shouldn't have been, only to the 5th. So you have a way to have this data that's incorruptible that shows either it happened right or it didn't happen right.
That's exactly right. Yeah, very, very well said. Information is all accessible by both the buyer, the seller, and the title company and the city. They can all go to this portal and see exactly what is happening, including the hash and timestamp of those prorated data.
All right, what's maybe a couple other examples? So maybe one that's like super ambitious that's not done yet, but you'd love to see, and maybe another one that's more mundane that's actually happening.
Yeah, so the next one I'm going to share is actually both pretty ambitious, but is also actually happening. So we're working with a Big Four accounting firm. I'm not sure if I can say them out loud. We've been, I won't say them out loud because I know we're going to do a press release here in the next couple of weeks, but we've been working with them for about a year now, developing a product that combines our blockchain approach, and AI to predict and prevent transaction fraud. And we've actually, just this last week, flew out to North Carolina and met with Wells Fargo and Bank of America, and we'll continue to meet with these other banks, showing them what we've put together. And again, this is already put together. We have a POC in place, and we're ready to start integrating. And the response so far from these banks has been just outstanding. So we're really excited about that, and we really feel we could have a huge impact on how blockchain is used in banking for this particular use case. Now, unfortunately, I can't give too many specifics there, but that's something that's been really exciting for us. Another one that's kind of more mundane, but again, pretty useful, is using blockchain for asset securitization, where along the securitization process of an asset, every party in that line who looks at this asset has different responsibilities or different data that they need to add to the asset in the securitization process. And for a document to go from company to company and for people to agree on that data has, as you can imagine, not been very seamless, and it's a pain to do. So we've got a company using our blockchain approach for that process, using Uledger to seamlessly help companies communicate during the asset securitization process.
Well, what's an example of an asset securitization that people can use as an example in their minds?
Let's talk about loans. So in many cases, companies will securitize a residential loan portfolio, and so each residential loan file in a portfolio, and usually these files come in the form of a huge Excel spreadsheet, need to be agreed upon, need to be time-stamped, need to be authenticated as authentic before they move on to the next party. So that's one example of asset securitization. There are many different forms of securitization, but residential loan securitization is the particular use case we're working on right now.
How much hand-holding is there with your solution? Because, I'm sure most of these companies, or all of them, are afraid of this unless you make it super easy for them. So what have you guys had to do in that arena, and what's working?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked that, because as we've gone to these conferences and met with companies, that's been one of their number one concerns is, okay, how much disruption is this going to be to my current environment? How much is it going to cost? And from the beginning, we've intentionally built Uledger to be a pretty seamless integration, again, working with their existing technology infrastructure. And Taulant and Pete have done an amazing job of making that happen. So Taulant, do you want to go into what you guys have done there?
Yeah, so there's two ways how to integrate with our product. The first one is what most people use for testing the integration out at first at low cost, which is just a web API. And that acts as a bridge to a blockchain instance. And then the actual implementation would be with an on-premise installation, which has the same API endpoints. So once people have played around with the web API, they can jump and use the exact same endpoints that they figured out with an on-site installation. It's a RESTful API, and it has like 20 plus endpoints for now, and we're adding new endpoints and new functionality pretty much every other week. And it's pretty simple, as long as you have a database which can publish in a publish-subscribe network or push data in a streaming fashion to an API, we can handle it. And the data on the traditional existing database or data store simply has to be in some form or fashion content addressable. So it's super easy to use with a document store, with a key value store, with most transactional databases, and with normal file storage. So what we're currently working on is on integrating this also with non-transactional SQL databases, and that's currently on the roadmap.
Okay. All right. Very good. So let's go to the roadmap. Actually, I was going to ask you. So what's on your roadmap for the next 6 months or a year? What's coming?
So on the roadmap, we're currently doing a pre-sale of our tokens, and so we're planning on closing that soon. I think Josh can give you more details on that. Okay. So after the ICO, which we plan to do probably either end of Q1 or Q2, which is a public token offering. In our case, we want to have more than simply the web and on-premise installation. We want actually a native RPC interface, which should probably be an order of magnitude faster, and roll the functionality out to event logging systems and other more traditional logging systems as well, because there was quite a bit of interest in integrating with things like Kafka and event logging systems and event handling systems to integrate natively with that. And that should keep our hands busy for some time. And just expand the API endpoint set.
Any features or things that are really requested by a lot of customers that you're working hard on, or do you feel like you're satisfying their needs for right now?
I mean, that's how we operate. From day one, we were talking to customers. So the API, the structure of the API endpoints, how to integrate with databases, that we should integrate with databases in the first place. All of that was guided by us talking to customers daily, really. So I would say that that's pretty different from most other blockchain startups out there. The one thing that people are most interested in, but which is going to take a bit more time for us, is going beyond just data verification, which we currently provide and it's fully functional, and go to independently verifiable order of events across chains. That requires quite a bit more verification logic on our end and extending the protocol, and that is on the roadmap for by the end of 2018. And that's really when some really interesting applications can start to happen in a sense that you can actually make your company logic, business logic, dependable on other companies and automate quite a few things, which today most people envision that being smart contracts, and we, as in a single global chain, which we absolutely disagree with, because real-world businesses essentially want to have smart contract type interdependency of their business logic with one another, and we believe that we can actually make that possible within the next year.
Well, very good. So what's the best way for interested parties to reach out to you guys and possibly talk about business?
Email is always good. We're always really responsive to email, phone calls. Our website is uledger.co, so uledger.co. If you contact us there, we're always really responsive. But obviously, feel free to email or call. Taulant mentioned briefly that we're right now in the middle of our token sale, and the success has been pretty good there. We're about to wrap up our seed portion of the token sale, and then in January we'll begin our pre-sale and follow that up with our public token sale in early February, we anticipate right now.
All right, very good. Well, guys, I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.